Okay, folks, I think a whole bunch of people are going to jump on here real fast right at the final hour. But welcome to another installment of the Happy Hour. ISFSI is super excited about the momentum this is causing and the buzz behind it. So this year we have past George D. Post Instructor of the Years to talk to us a little bit about training. If you have a question, please use the chat box and I'll try to monitor that the best I can. And then if you want to virtually raise your hand or turn on your mic and I can call on you, but it works best to stick with the chats. That way we're not talking over each other. And if everybody could just mute their mic now, and we'll start things off with a message from our president, Chief Pete Van Dorpe, who happens to be one of our past instructors of the year. And if you wanted to kick us off.
Yeah, sure. Weren't you supposed to warn me about that ahead of time so I could prepare some appropriate remarks? Yeah, okay. Welcome and thanks for being here. As Seth said, this is actually the success of this has really surprised us. We've been getting pretty consistently around 50 people a week. We get some repeat customers. We've also been getting new folks every week, so that both of those things are good to see. And we're not really doing any kind of format with this yet. You know, we're just sort of like, who can we get to agree to be here that might have something intelligent to say? Present company accepted. And hopefully this will morph into where those of you that are deciding to join in and participate will start taking over the lead a little bit on this and drive the conversation, because that's really the big part of what we wanted this to be, was a chance for the membership to have a more vocal, you know, widespread voice in the organization, right? It's easy to send emails and we have all kinds of posts and blogs and all that kind of stuff, but there's no substitute for face-to-face conversation, and this is the closest, right? So thanks again for being here. Anybody want to jump in? Just jump in. As Seth mentioned, it's usually better to do it on the chat first so he can, you know, because a lot of people might have the same sort of question or idea, and he moderates really well. So that's the intro, Seth. Now you're gonna have to pick it back up.
Yeah, so, you know, we've been taking this surveys pretty seriously on what you guys want to see and what you guys want to see in the future and what we want to talk about. And so some of the comments have been that, you know, kind of the discussion is dominated by a few of us on this. So if you guys have any questions, fire them off and I'll do my best to get to them all. And if there's something that we can't answer, we're going to post up my email and Jason's email, and we can get your questions answered or put you in touch with the right instructor to help you out. The buzz behind this has been great. You know, I've been talking with 3 or 4 instructors that I've never met around the country, and we've been sharing training curriculums and ideas, and it's been truly awesome. So I'm going to post my email on the chat board. And Jason, you wanted my partner in crime in this whole thing. Jason, you want to just give us a little intro with you before we get started?
Yeah, absolutely, Seth. Thanks. And like Peter said, it's really about the relationships with the members. So, you know, we just had survey great. This is for to share and to ask questions. And so we need moderators like Seth to guide us maybe when it goes on the conversation. Strength comes from all of you typing those questions in the chat, allowing our experts and our special guests to be able to share their outside the happy hour to do content with each other. So Peter and Seth and Brian and Matt that are all on the board, just great work, and we look at today's having a lot of our past administrative staff, Mark. So thanks, and I'll share my email, and if you have a topic you want in the future, please share with us so that we can start working on building it out for the next meetings.
Awesome, thanks. Everybody hear me okay? Jason's audio is a little bit garbled. Was that true for everybody else? Okay, is everybody hearing me okay? Thumbs up? Okay, perfect. Okay, Eddie, we're gonna start with you, Chief Buchanan. What are you doing now? And, you know, kind of the big buzz after the push there, after the Slice RS came out, and a big, huge push with ISFSI. What do you got going on now, and how you staying passionate about training?
Well, Seth, thanks for having me, man. This is really cool. We didn't have this back in the day, so it's kind of neat to see how the technology and how the society is growing and all that. It's really, really awesome to watch. Exciting to see Pete take the helm and see where it goes. It's going to be an awesome ride. Let's see, since the slicer thing. So it's still an ongoing thing. You know what I mean? It's like we don't now with the department. I've been assigned to administration for I don't know too long probably, but working there for a bit. But I still all the assistant chiefs work very closely together, and we pay a lot of attention to what's going on out in the field. And we have been watching the research as it progresses going forward. So we have done a couple updates to our tactical guidelines since then, and we're just kind of, I would call it a maintenance phase of looking to see, like right now, the coordinated vent fire attack thing, and then the strip mall studies, and all this new information that we want. We have, the way we do it in Hanover, we have a lot of work groups. We have we call it the fire services work group. They are all our tactical gurus out in the field, and those guys get together and they'll look at the information and decide, what does it mean to us, locally? Are we going to modify, amend, do anything different at all? Maybe not. Crunching through all that. So, I was thinking about the other day, I'm getting towards the backside of the career. It's been phases. Like, I remember basic training was big for a while, and then survival training became big for a while. And, then the fire dynamics thing became big, still going. And, I hope we can put this pandemic crap behind us here pretty soon. It doesn't stick around, but we've been putting a lot of effort into that lately. It comes in waves, right? And, to stay passionate about training, I think you just got to keep your hands in it to the best extent you can. We've got a recruit school that's in their burn weeks right now. So I'll be out there tomorrow, get to, go root it up with the guys and gals in the burn tower and see what's going on. So, I think that's the most important thing, is to, even if you are assigned to the business side of the house where you have to worry about budgets and human resources and things like that, it's important to be able to every now and then get back to the field and stay grounded out there with the guys and girls. So, it's just an evolutionary process, man. The fire dynamics thing was big, and I'm sure that'll continue, and who knows what we'll be doing next.
Awesome. It looks like the chat room is not working, and it's only allowing me to send to the organizer. So I'm not sure if everybody saw my email, but I'm working on it with Jamie right now. So we're sharing text. And Chief Kastros, welcome, and thanks for being here. I really appreciate you taking some time out today as well. What do you got? What are you up to now?
Thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay? Good. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And second of all, I can't thank everyone for the honor of the Instructor of the Year last year. My family and I are still riding that high, as everybody knows. It's incredibly humbling. I think the timing of it was particularly profound for my wife and I and our kids, because I retired literally the month before FDIC, and so it was kind of like I couldn't have asked for or prayed for a more amazing ending to my career. So thank you all for that. It was unbelievable. We're all passionate about training. We all love it, and what I enjoy, one of the things I enjoy the most is how all of us who love to train, who are instructors, and when I'm here preaching to the choir, so thank you. I love seeing the similarities we have. The more and more of us I meet, I love pulling our little idiosyncratic similarities out. And I'm looking down at my friend Paul Combs, and we were just texting with a bunch of other nitwits a little bit within the last hour about the impact of this whole COVID thing on all of us. And obviously everybody on this screen right now, everybody who's participating, everybody who's in this society, we all love to train, we're training, but this COVID thing has really dampened that. And I don't know about you all, but I'm sick and tired of doing this. I'm sick and tired of sitting in front of a camera, in front of a computer screen, choosing virtual backgrounds and not knowing if what I'm saying even resonates. I don't know about you all, but I love it. I love the interaction of the students, whether it's hands-on training or even just a lecture in a classroom. I just love that engagement. So it's been really challenging, not only to learn all this new Zoom go-to-meeting technology. I mean, look at this ridiculous thing I bought. I bought this is like a special light that, like, my wife got me this light that you can put in front of your face. So it makes my nose look smaller, she said, which I'm like, well, there must be a lot more than one light on me then, because I got a big proboscis. So, it's just weird. So I was interested to see what you all have to say about how you've transformed your busy schedules into online training to keep your momentum and your message out there. So that would be my question and opening volley, if you will.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about that over the last couple of weeks. Me and Chief Hoppel have been expressing how almost a re-energizing of our troops that are on the ground, that they're psyched to get out there and train on a company level and really get after it. Our fire department has gotten dramatically slow with this because everybody's taking it really seriously in my town. Everybody's staying inside where our state lines are still closed. So it's a very weird pulse of our community, but our guys are just, I tell you, they're giving it 110% from a training aspect because they're kind of starving for the big calls right now. How about anybody else? What is it? Anybody else have anything to add how this has affected them a little bit beyond the training ground? Or the chat's not working. Jamie's working hard on it. So if somebody wants to just unmute their mic and give it a go. Okay, so we're going to turn it over to Paul here now. Paul, thanks for coming, man. I really appreciate it. It's good seeing you. It's a super bummer not seeing you at FDIC this year, but at least I get to see you today. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
I think I missed the hugs the most. I know you and I have had this conversation, and probably some more within this group. The FDIC, I mean, it's the training, it's everything that FDIC is. But to me, it's more of a family reunion. It's that one time a year we get together, we get that big hug in, and then kind of catch up on what's been happening in life for a year. So I think I missed that more than anything with FDIC not being this April. So, but no, hey, thanks for inviting me on here. I do have a question for Andoni. Stand up. No, seriously, are you wearing pants?
A, I'm not going to stand up. And B, no, I'm not wearing pants, so don't put me in that position right now. Okay, you know what it's like when I stick my tongue on the cold pole. The same thing happens with this leather chair. So stop.
No, things are good. I retired last September. Retirement sucks. Don't ever do it. Still drawing, still taking notes. So that's been my biggest connection with the fire service right now, is just still doing the cartoons for fire engineering. With the COVID thing, I mean, the academy's been shut down, both the local academy that I teach with and also the state academy. The on-scene training associates guys, we've had to stop our training around the country. So I've been feel like I've been held prisoner here in the studio for the past 3 or 4 months. So, thank God I have the ability and the gift to be able to draw these things, or I would probably be crawling the walls right now, because this is these cartoons have been my lifeline. So, but no, things are progressing. Itching to get back into the fire service at some point somehow. So,
hey Paul, what do you think being a part of ISFSI has done for your career when you're either still on the line or helping out with training? How do you think you benefited from ISFSI?
For me, it's the camaraderie and being able to connect with the other ISFSI instructors. It kind of opened up a whole new avenue for me as far as being able to network with people that are far smarter than me, to be able to figure out some of the stuff that I go out and teach on a weekly basis. So, but that's been the biggest thing for me, is just that camaraderie, that networking lifeline that I can always call on and get answers to tough questions. Like I said, I like to surround myself with people that are far smarter than me. So I couldn't have asked for a better organization to do that. Trust me.
How about you, Eddie? You've been kind of removed from ISFSI for a little bit of a distance since you were president here. We kind of had the big fame and fortune, if you will, and then you went off to do bigger and better things. But what do you think ISFSI has done for you? Because I know you were in a leadership position when I first joined. So you were pretty impactful for me walking through the door. So what has it done for you?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of ways to look at it. It's that connectivity, kind of like Paul was saying, not just from a brother to brother, sister to sister type thing. It's being able to figure out, has anybody encountered the problem that I'm facing, and do they have a solution to it already that I can benefit from? And then, you know, being able to share that information, I think, is really critical. And then as your career progresses, or you get into new information or new ways of doing business, having that sounding board to check ideas on, and then to, you know, if you look at the power dynamics stuff, that was, you know, a lot of that started locally and then grew beyond our borders, and then just kind of left and took a life of its own. And that was all because of the society. That, you know, that's the way that works. And I still talk to a lot of my, you know, the close leadership circle we had back when I was president. I still talk to those people all the time. You know, they're like personal confidants that you can call when you have a problem or a question. So those things never go away. You know, I think even when you're, and I see that with a lot of the old school ISFSI members, you know, from way back in the day, they do the same thing, man. That those guys have been retired for, you know, 20, 30, 40 years, some of them, and they're still staying in touch. It never stops, you know. So it's a tremendous impact, I think, the society's had.
Awesome. How about you, Chief Kastros? We're navigating, trying to open up this chat box, and it just messed with my whole screen, but hopefully you guys can still hear me. And Chief Kastros, I'll lay it over to you. How did the whole ISFSI connectivity help you out?
Oh gosh, I can hardly put it into words. You know, I want to echo what everybody else already said, which is number one, it's the camaraderie. It helps when because all of us are kind of nuts, right? Because we do this, we love to teach, and we're addicted to this awesome career and profession and teaching it. And so every once in a while, you start to wonder if you're crazy. And about the time if you wonder if you're nuts, you reach out to somebody from ISFSI, or you go to a chat room, or you make a phone call, or you do something like this, or you go to FDIC, and you realize you're not nuts. There's actually a support group. It's like Comic-Con or something, you know. And to me, that's been awesome. And the connections you make over a buffet, or over a happy hour, or over, you know, a drink or something at an Indy or wherever, is tremendous. And I love how we are all like-minded, but we also all come at things from different perspectives. You know, some of us are in the Midwest, some of us are on the West Coast, some of us are on the East Coast, some of us come from larger urban departments, like Chief Van Dorpe when he was in Chicago. Some of us come from smaller volunteer departments. And the thing is even though our perspectives change from person to person, that's where the real learning happens. What I love is that we all have the same mindset. So it's just different dialects of crazy, but we all speak crazy, and I love it. And to say that ISFSI has been a tremendous blessing to my career, and it would be a gross understatement. And so thank you all for that, because it's phenomenal. And you know, Paul had mentioned being in his studio and kind of hunkered down. One of the things that I've had to do is we've been meeting to build some new curriculum, some online curriculum, well before the COVID-19 hit. And this has kind of forced my wife and I and our team to actually go to the drawing board. Without traveling and teaching, we're able to stick to the training, the getting ready for the online training. So for a better part of a year, we've been getting ready for this online programs that we're launching next month. And what's nice is when you're with ISFSI, is you can bounce stuff off of people, and you can get their input before you go to the whole country or the whole world or whoever your audience is. You can bounce stuff off of a smaller, trusted group of colleagues, and you know that their opinion is going to be honest, it's going to have a great perspective, and it's going to be very valuable, even if it hurts. And so those are just some of the things. I go on all day, obviously, but that's just some of the things.
What about you, Vince? Got anything to add as far as ISFSI? You're kind of on the other side of the country from me.
No, I think everybody covered it. That it was for me. I've been in and out for a long time, and the networking is the biggest thing. I mean, because we met Forrest, we ended up doing a lot of certification training with him. Brought him up here, and we ended up getting all of our training officers at the time certified to level 3. So that was one of the biggest networking deals that I had, that worked out great for us. Traveling around and getting to meet people, and like I said, it's the same issues seem to be with everybody. And when other people have other perspectives on the problem and give you lots of ideas for solutions, it's always helpful. So I've been really happy and stayed involved quite a bit lately, and it's really helped out a lot. It's, like the fire service says, there's no new wheels. It's just you have to steal them from other people and adapt them to where you are. So I've really enjoyed my time.
Awesome. Thank you. Did Steve Kerber make it on?
Yeah, I'm here. You hear me?
Oh, there you are. Okay, sorry. Hey, Steve, thanks for coming. And yeah, how are you? What are you doing now about training, and how are you keeping passionate about it?
Oh, we're just doing that fire dynamic stuff that Eddie was talking about. We're just doing what we can to try and keep up with all of you, I think is the best way to describe it. It's I guess the way I would put, I put it this way is we're trying to catch up for 200 years of firefighting without any research. So the list of questions that we get from the fire service, especially instructors, is just a never-ending list. So we're in the mode of prioritization, what we think is going to make the biggest impact, and how quickly it can make that impact. Research takes a while, so it's hard to keep up with everything that we want to know, that we want to pass along. And I would say the one thing that has made ISFSI so valuable to me and to us and what we're trying to do is that when you look at getting any message out in the fire service, it's a daunting task. The fire service could not be more fragmented than it is in many ways, and there is no one place that you can put something where people hear it correctly, comprehend it correctly, implement it correctly. None of that is simple. So it's what ISFSI does is one, I see it as a group of people that are incredibly engaged, that care about the job at a different level in many ways. And I think as Anthony was pointing out and as Paul was saying, being an instructor is a awesome responsibility. And I think what you take on and what you're going to do, those are the kind of people that we want to get our information in the hands of, because you're the ones that are going to give it that extra level of, okay, there is no silver bullet here. I'm not going to take this for face value immediately. Let's figure out how this applies to our system and other people's systems and the fire service as a whole, and play that vital translator role that we need. And of course, we learn lessons along the way, and I think we learned a lot of lessons with Eddie and slicers, and how all that evolved and how it continues to evolve. And seeing Pete in charge here is exciting. Pete's I remember meeting Pete at a high rise in Chicago before we were getting ready to burn there, and he was just as pretty then as he is now, not quite as old, but here was a guy that was incredibly switched on and wanted to learn more, even though he had a ton of experience and family that had a ton of experience. And the fact that he put his hand up to take a leadership role in this organization just speaks to who Pete is. And I think we're going to have no problem continuing the great partnership that we've had with ISFSI, and we expect him to be a conduit to bring back what do you want to know. I know we're actually in the process of putting in our next AFG grant right now. Yep. And the topic of that is going to be essentially trying to give instructors information on the chemical hazards associated with their training fuels, and giving you some quantitative information to make those decisions, because there is crazy variation across the board, and there doesn't need to be. You guys should be making decisions with real information, not thoughts of what it might be. Between OSB and soundboard and all kinds of different stuff that's being thrown in training these days, and the fear of cancer and all of that, it's important that we have some research to make decisions on. That's what we're up to.
Steve, I got a question for you. Again, thanks for being here. Do you see college, universities, and various fire academies ever playing a bigger part in fire service research, specifically with similar research studies done by UL?
So we work with universities. We work with many universities, and University of Illinois, University of Maryland, Case Western University. So there's a number of universities we work with. University of Arizona, depending on once you start getting into cancer and human health and other things, there's a tremendous amount of expertise in universities. I mean, we also work with training academies. A lot of our training fire studies and things like that are done at training academies. Our current lab space is actually leased space at the Delaware County Emergency Services Training Center right outside of Philadelphia. So our main lab is at a firefighter training academy. So yes, I mean, we want as many partnerships as we can possibly get, and whatever help we can get. I mean, we're a nonprofit, and we're doing our best to get as many resources and as much feedback. I mean, hopefully you've heard me say it many times. Our mission is to do research with the fire service, not for the fire service. And that includes holding people accountable from the university perspective as well. I mean, if I see one more grant proposal where the university talked to one local fire training academy and think they know what the fire service needs, it makes me sick to my stomach. So it's we can do better. And I mean, every training academy, and this is for all you instructors. I mean, if you don't have relationships with your local universities, you should. They're a wealth of expertise in various subjects, no matter what departments or divisions they have. I mean, you can go there and find an expert in finance that might be able to do a small project with you because they want to help the fire service. I mean, who doesn't want to help the fire service? And we know that's all not completely true, but it should be true. But give them a project, get access to their students, take their expertise, tell them what all your needs are and your problems are, and they might have solutions or help that in many ways will just come to you for free, and they'll benefit from that interaction as well. So strike up those conversations, go find those people, and figure out where their expertise. Now, I mean, don't go there and expecting them to solve all your fire dynamics problems or something like that, but they're not going to start burning buildings with you or things along those lines unless they have a program for that. Or if you're like Chief Coey and you just build your own capability and start buying instruments and start making good measurements, that's a possibility too. But university relationships can be huge, but again, you still need to translate what you get out of that. Just like our stuff, you need to be the smart person in the middle. The instructors need to be the smart people in the middle to take what you're going to get from the university and figure out whether or not you can apply it or not. You might get total garbage, but chances are you're getting garbage because you didn't communicate with them well about what you were looking for and what your reality is.
Well said. I completely agree. Jason, do you have something?
Eddie's got something.
No, he was
I'll
just
add to
making
that.
fun of us for building our own, but we had to get in our local region to change the culture of fire. And that's why we started building our own props and doing some testing.
Eddie, what do you got?
I was going to add on what Steve was saying about the universities and the opportunities there. I forget how many years ago it was. It's been probably 10 or 15 years ago. We reached out to Virginia Commonwealth University and their statistics department and had them analyze our CAD data. We gave them several years of CAD data from our runs, and they actually took that and gave us a recommended deployment model based on our geography and what our stuff, and they did that for free, and ended up taking a pretty strong interest in what we were doing. And I think that eventually led to some, academic papers they wrote, and we got the benefit of that study. So and even now today, we're actually coming to the final, getting to the end game of what they suggested then so long ago. So just waiting for the staffing to catch up. So there's lots of opportunity there if you reach out in your community. It's probably somebody there can help you.
Yeah, I'll pile on this one as well. And I don't know how many of you guys tuning in have this need or don't yet have a relationship with a local university, but University of Illinois and the Illinois Fire Service Institute are joined at the hip, and they always have been. So we've really benefited from this. And so we can hook you up is what I'm getting at. And Gavin Horn, who was the director of that research institute at the University of Illinois, now works for UL, so we can really hook you up. Like, how do you do this? Who are the people you need to talk to? What kind of questions do you need to ask them? How do you approach them? All that kind of stuff. Steve made a really good point, is that, they're their own thing, just like we're our own thing. We know how we tend to brush off people that come to walk in and are going to solve all our problems or tell us what to do or whatever. They've got to respect who and what we are. Universities are the same way. They have their own culture. They have their own way of talking to one another. But these guys are right. They can do an incredible amount of work for you. And it's usually free, because there's all kinds of graduate students looking for projects to work on so they can get their graduate degrees or their doctorates. And yeah, there's a lot of opportunities out there.
Chief Kastros, you have 1 foot out the door here, but you're still training a lot and doing a lot of teaching around the country. What would you say, or what advice would you say to, the brand new training officer coming into the department? How to go about it, how to navigate it? What would be some words of wisdom that you could pass on?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the first thing would be take inventory of what's already been done and who did it, and talk to those folks, build relationships with your predecessors who came before you, and build upon what they've done, learn from their mistakes, their successes. I know personally where I got in trouble and where I've seen others get in trouble is when you think that you're the first one who discovered the wheel or discovered fire or water puts fire out, or whatever it is. You think you're the first one that ever had this idea, and then you go headlong into this endeavor, this enterprise, and you have no clue that there are generations of people on whose shoulders you're standing without even realizing it. And I've seen that happen at my department also, because we've had such rapid retirement, a huge attrition rate where I retired from. And there was a vacuum of people coming up behind all the officers that were retiring and all the experience. And these folks were smart, well-intended, great high level of motivation, and they would just step off into a particular topic or training evolution or subject, and not knowing that somebody who just retired or who was about to retire maybe 3, 5, 10 years ago created a huge body of knowledge in that area, and the timing just wasn't right, or things have changed, or whatever. And what they don't know that they're doing inadvertently is they're building a resistance without realizing it. There's a resistance of people who are maybe resentful, or not even towards that person, but resentful that they're not getting the support that this person's getting. Maybe whatever the topic was not in vogue 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, when somebody else was trying it, but now it's the end thing, or it's the thing this particular chief wants to pursue, or it's important to that administration. So all of a sudden, all the new guys who don't have the baggage and the history are being asked to take part in something, and not knowing that you may be alienating legions of older, more experienced members who went down that path and will be more than happy to help if you just ask them. And I think a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of people with a lot of experience and heart and soul and blood, sweat and tears and road rash who may have gone before you that you don't even realize because you didn't ask. And it's nobody's fault. It's, you know, you just kind of see it after a while. So that would be, I think, the biggest piece of advice I would give anybody who's new to training or trying to make a change, or who's passionate and eager. You almost see that look in their eye that you know you had when you started, and you want to give them that wisdom without alienating and returning them off either. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's
no, it makes complete sense. It makes complete sense. You know, in my organization, I have a fairly young organization, so you know everybody's kind of starving for the information, and we don't really have that 30 to 40-year guy on the job that's passing it on. So we look to people like you guys to pass down the knowledge, especially when we get ingrained in our little bubble, or our little inbred bubble, and nowhere Montana or nowhere Colorado. And that's, to be honest, exactly why I came into ISFSI, is to meet you guys and try to gain as much knowledge as I could.
You know, and it doesn't even have to be 40 or 50-year-old, you know, or people that have been around forever. I mean, an example I could give you is where I came from in Metro. We started a helicopter program, and the helicopter program, literally, no pun intended, got off the ground from nothing. I mean, there was a core group of folks who presented it, who got the funding, who got the expertise, but what happened was it was such a popular, obviously a sexy, popular enterprise that there were many facets to it, like training and other things. And what we found was, like, every 2 years there was a complete reboot of who was in the program, and that new group of people were brought in and bushy-tailed, excited to be part of the helicopter program, which is a high risk. You know, air operations is very high risk, and they're excited. But nobody told the old guys, and the old guys in this case were only 2 years ahead of the new guys, you know. But in a helicopter program that is brand new, 2 years is a long time to get knowledge. And you got the sense that the new folks coming in were starting from scratch and not building upon what their predecessors had done. Their predecessors, not being asked to be involved or asked for their advice, became resistant to the program and resentful to the new folks coming in. And it was nobody's fault. It's just kind of how it happened. And so I think unfortunately, that's a big part of this world that we're in. It's the egos, and it sucks. And what I like about ISFSI is everyone checks their egos at the door. You know, everyone checks their egos at the door. Nobody postures with anything other than humility. And I love that about this group. So,
well, it's because we all know what we don't know, right? Or if I even said that right. Paul, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Anthony was just saying. It's just, you know, the biggest thing for me is that you got to come into this with passion. I mean, we've all seen that people get into being instructors for all the wrong reasons. Whether you just want to be in it for the certification, the prestige, whatever it may be. It's not a self-service type thing you're getting into. You know, and if there's something that I always tell some of the folks that want to be instructors, you got to be passionate about this. You got to want to be the teacher. And you got to want to continue to be the student. You know, it's not something you step up and say, okay, I've got my certifications, I'm an instructor, I'm set, let's go. I'm going to show you the one thing that I've learned for the next 30 years. That drives me insane with instructors, is they just get set in their ways. They're not continually learning. They're not on podcasts like this trying to soak in other information and trying to get everything they can out of every other instructor and senior man, so they can make their class a little bit better, so what you're presenting is even more rich. That just drives me insane. So you've got to have that passion. You know, and being part of that is you got to be willing to listen and learn. Then that goes from the brand new instructor, from the day you get your certifications to the day you walk out and you're not an instructor anymore. You're listening, you're learning. You know, another thing that I really see out there, and it goes back, and I can't remember if it was Anthony or Eddie that was saying this, about, you know, we didn't invent the wheel. You know, we didn't come out here and say that, you know, we're the one that discovered that water actually puts out fire. You know, we've got to give credit. We're all standing on some pretty big shoulders. You know, so But yeah, I mean, it's the one thing that I just try to always instill with new instructors and folks that I know that are coming up, and even instructors where, you know, there may be 3 or 4 years away from really becoming an instructor, but you're still trying to pull them in and being an assistant from time to time, because you want to start instilling some of these good attributes and some of these good habits into them about, you know, just being passionate about this. So
Yeah,
that's my 2 cents.
no, I appreciate that. I think my breakthrough moment as an instructor, as a training officer, was realizing that I was not the smartest guy in the room, or I didn't know everything, or I wasn't the best at it. And I could learn from these guys and these kids, and they were way better, way faster. You know, something that I've learned quickly in my career is there's always somebody who knows something more, and there's always somebody who can do it better. So,
absolutely. You know, and the thing is that, I mean, I've taught ground ladders and truck ops at our academy for the past 15 years. And one of the things I'd love to ask when we get a new group of students, because they all come from such diverse backgrounds from our area, is who are my construction guys? Who are the roofers? Who are the guys that are actually up on ladders on a day job somewhere? Because I want to pull more information from you. You know, because I'm a firefighter, but I also have an art degree, which really doesn't mean a whole lot. So when I get somebody that I can start picking their brain about building construction, I'm all over that. You know, so it's just, you've got to always be the student.
yeah, agreed.
To Paul's point, if you don't mind, I'd like to dovetail on what Paul just said.
Yeah,
I think it comes to knowing your audience, and you have to have that humility to know that there may be one of your quote unquote students may know a lot more than you do, or have more experience, or have a different perspective. And one of the things that, and I want to do a shout out to Steve Kerber on this one, because I was in the audience and enjoyed listening to Steve's keynote address. What year was that, Steve? That was like, what, 14 or 15 or 12 or 11, or what year was that?
I lost track. I can't remember.
So
you lose a lot of hair, Anthony.
I feel a lot better about myself now, so thank you, because I can't remember what I did yesterday. So, but you said something in your keynote, and this was right when the fire behavior stuff was just, you know, still on the uprise, even where it was not even at its apex probably. But you said something that I thought was brilliant, and I thought was humble at the same time. And you said, look, it's about blending the best of both, the academic research and the experience, and understanding that there's value in both. Because at that time, the sense I was getting as an instructor in the country was a lot of the younger folks who didn't have experience were really adhering to the studies. And that's because that's really, in some cases, all they had. They may not have had a lot of fire experience. They didn't have a lot of even live fire training even maybe yet in their young careers. And so they were adhering to what they did have, which was this exposure and access to these amazing studies that they could relate to. And because of social media and because of the internet, they had ready access to it. They could take a phone and have ready access to stuff that most of us in this group now, when we started our careers, you have to go find a slide tray carousel somewhere buried in a closet, or an old book from the 50s or 60s. And the folks coming up during the past 10 years, they just go to this and boom, I'm an expert. And when you gave your keynote, Steve, I loved how you had that awareness. You had the awareness of both the younger students and the older students, and you understood the need to bridge them both and to get the best out of both of them. And I hadn't seen you speak before that. I obviously knew the work, but I hadn't seen you speak, and I was really impressed by that. To me, that goes to knowing your audience. It's easy as an instructor to always want to teach to the people that think like you. The wise instructor understands that you're always going to have people who don't think like you. And if you want to be a better instructor and be a better student yourself, you have to reach out to the people that think differently than you, so you both are better off. And I thought you encapsulated that in your keynote, when you could have easily gone a different direction. I thought it was great. So that's just another lesson I think that we should all take.
Very kind. Thank you.
So Eddie, back to you, buddy. What advice would you give to the guys coming in through the door that want to be not necessarily the ground firefighters, but like, because I feel like, to be honest, in my organization, the people that are coming through the door that are getting the jobs are highly educated. They've drank the Kool-Aid. They know what modern fire behavior is all about. What advice would you give the new instructor based on lessons that you've learned in your career?
I think probably one of the important things is follow your gut and do the right stuff. You know, I mean, it's sometimes change is a funny thing in the fire service. It's can be intimidating, and we may want to, you know, we're obviously not overly excited about change as a group, but it's necessary. And there's a couple of ways to look at it. A young instructor might view change or resistance to change as intimidating and something you'd want to try to avoid. But probably the hardest lesson I learned was resistance to change. Resistance to change is actually a sign of progress. So if nobody's paying any attention to the whatever it is you're doing, and nobody's you know, a little ruffled about it, then you're probably not moving the needle. So not until you start getting some chatter about it do you really understand that you're making progress. And you have to, rather than see that as a hurdle or barrier, it's something you'll have to push through. And you know, just I think humility is great to be able to, if something is inaccurate or wrong, you have to let the data do what the data does and drive you that way. But don't be afraid to push that, whatever the new thing is, forward. You know, I think that's what I think we need to be mindful of, particularly for instructors. If you're going to, you know, you're going to be the ones hopefully out paying attention to the research and what's going on and what's new and what works, what doesn't work in your locality, and then having the ability and I guess the courage to take that forward. And you know, it'll work out in the long run. It always does. But the courage to do the right thing, I think, is an important piece of that.
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, when I started with ISFSI teaching and the PMFA and the Slice RS push out there based on the UL studies, that was a very big turning point, because all of a sudden it wasn't experience-based or theory-based, but it was fact-based and science-based. And you know, we had our challenges with that, and there's some struggles out there. But you know, that was, as an instructor, I think that was a very big turning point. You know, because for us out here in Montana, you know, we don't fight that many fires, so we have to rely on other people's research and other people's experience in order to come up with sound tactics, because we just don't have the sets and reps that everybody else has. You know. So finishing up here with Steve, you know, Steve, what would you recommend, you know, for the young gun out there that's aspiring to train his organization, or what advice would you give that person? You know, you've influenced a tremendous amount of instructors across the country and around the world, and you know, I think you can give us some good points.
That is a really hard question. I mean, the thing that immediately comes to mind is do your own homework. I mean, everything that everybody's talking about with the passion, yes, absolutely. With knowing your audience and all of it, it's so spot on. And it's so when we do research, one of the hardest things we have to do is bound the problem and develop context. Because much like Seth, you said, you can't go to every fire, you can't gain every experience, you don't have the sets and reps. Well, we don't have unlimited resources to do unlimited research either. So we need to make really intelligent decisions based on the information that we have available, including gaining and absorbing as much experience from as many people as possible. I mean, that's the other, like one of the biggest reasons for our advisory board, which Pete sits on, is to soak up as much knowledge and experience that's out there with as many differing opinions as you can possibly have to figure out whether you can truly bound the problem or not. Because if we can understand one end and understand the other end and be pretty sure that reality falls in the middle somewhere, that gives us a really nice place to work. And then where we need people to do their homework, and especially instructors, is when does it fall outside those boundaries? And if it falls outside those boundaries, let's not try and force the solution that we bound in the middle and try and apply it to something that falls outside. And that, I mean, that could go for anything, any tactic, any rule of thumb, all of these things. In many ways, we do your homework to figure out where that rule of thumb came from. Because in many ways, that rule of thumb came from a set of assumptions that are way outside of what you deal with, then you can't use that rule of thumb. I mean, rarely do we look for why something is the way it is. And I think that's where a lot of young instructors need to go, is define the context first. I mean, we could all sit here all day long and argue with each other on tactics till we're blue in the face. And if Paul is looking at a single family house and in his mind it's 2 stories, and in mine it's a story and a half, and we could be arguing the same exact point with the same exact assumptions, but we've got a different context in our head. And I feel like we do that all the time. And if we can avoid doing a lot of that, I think we can do a lot more learning, and we can have a lot more intelligent conversations that can move us all forward, especially those young instructors that are looking to be respected, are looking to make that next leap from individual contributor to a contributor at the team level. And I think that respect comes from those conversations. It comes from asking those questions and getting those answers. And Anthony says, I always do this. Okay, Anthony, okay. So help me understand why. You just did that. Help me understand why you did that. And then that's how we really get better. Don't just say, well, you did this under this circumstance, so therefore I will always do this under this circumstance. Well, you didn't know that Anthony only does that when the street is yellow. And now you're on a call where the street's blue, and you go and do that, and people get hurt or otherwise. I think that's the big thing, is ask the questions, dig into the context, and truly understand. Seek to truly understand.
Did you have a question?
I'll add to that, man. The staffing is a great example of that, what Steve's talking about, because a fire in my fire department might be completely different than yours. If I come with 30 people and you come with 2, you know what I mean? It's same type of fire, but it could be so different. Good stuff.
Go ahead.
Hey, Seth.
Yep.
Obviously, there's a lot more smarter people than I that have been talking for about the last hour or so, but the one thing that's kind of resonated with me out of all of these conversations is that everything we're talking about directly ties back or correlates into leadership. And one of the things that we need to make sure that we are impressing upon anyone who wants to be an instructor is that this is kind of their interview or their learning process for hopefully becoming a leader within the fire department, and that your instructors and your department's leadership need to all have a good working relationship so that what's being taught in the academy or in generalized training actually makes it back out to the field and doesn't hit resistance once they get back out to the field and say, look, I don't care what you just learned for the last, weekend or 2 weeks or 6 months. This is how we do it out here. To actually have that forward progress that folks have been talking about, and to keep that momentum going forward, everyone has to realize that they play a part. And it's not just going out and teaching a topic. It's not just going out and, learning from your students as much as you pass along to them. It's building that relationship department-wide so that everybody is on the same page and that everybody is leading towards a common vision, a common mission, and a common goal, so that no matter what color the street is, no matter what day of the week it is, no matter what color the fire truck is, No matter what shift it is, no matter who's riding the front seat, no matter who's in the buggy, everything is going to get done as close to the same, given the same circumstances at any given time.
Very, very well said. You know, I'm going to resonate on what Steve said about, you know, doing your homework. You know, I can't overemphasize that enough, because everybody knows when you're faking it. Everybody knows when you're winging it, when you don't know what you're talking about. You know, and I'll use the example of when PMFA came out and the fire behavior and the fire science was just, you know, extraordinarily difficult for me to wrap my head around. And I made it my mission to really know what I was talking about before standing in front of a group of 50 instructors like yourself and trying to talk intelligently about it. Well, we're wrapping up here, guys. I know everybody's super busy and we try to keep these things short and sweet. Eddie, do you have something to add?
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, you better have your crap together.
So I want to thank Pete and Steve and Paul and Eddie very, very much for taking time out of their super busy schedules to hang out with us on this happy hour. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And my email is sbarker@bigskyfire.org. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to put you in touch with a person that does. If you need any help with your training program, training curriculums, anything like that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and Jason, and we're going to steer you in the right direction. And with that, unless anybody has any closing comments, I really want to thank all our guests again, and hopefully we'll see you guys all next week.
I got a last word. So come back next week and bring somebody with you next week, right? Doesn't have to be a member. Share the link with somebody that you think needs to be here, all right? Let's keep this thing moving along and bring some new faces. Somebody young would be nice. We talked a lot about the young guys. Bring the young guy with you next week. Thanks, all.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Seth.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks for the invite.
Thanks, guys. Great as always.